apologizing to his fans tonight after sparking a nationwide backlash with his now deleted tweet. So here is what he wrote on Twitter. Fellow liberals, if you are interested at all in crossing the aisle, you should consider following Ben Shapiro. I don't agree with him on much, but he's a genuine person who once helped me for no other reason than to be nice. He doesn't bend the truth. His intentions are good. That started a really big debate on Twitter that got pretty ugly. Here now on this and many other things tonight, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com. Ben, good to see you tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so he wrote that. He then got a ton of heat all over Twitter from people digging up stuff that you wrote several years ago that you had since deleted or said that you regretted saying for one reason or another. And everything in Hollywood came at him. He's not a particularly well-known name, I don't think, to most people. Talk to me a little bit about that part of it, and then I'm going to put up some of his apology.
Yeah, well, I think that Mark's a nice guy. From what I could tell, he came into our offices a couple of months ago because he was doing a project about guns and gun control, and he wanted kind of the right-wing Second Amendment views. So he came in, we talked for about an hour and a half, and then he took off. I told him at the time that it's probably good that people don't know that we met, since folks in Hollywood are not particularly fond of people on the right, and any association with people on the right is not going to work out well. He sort of tweeted that out unsolicited. Like, I hadn't talked with him since that day, actually. And the blowback on Twitter was from a lot of his Hollywood friends, a lot of people on the far left. And just as we've seen many, many times, the sort of mob mentality rules on Twitter, and he promptly deleted that tweet after probably an hour or two. And then this morning, he put up a full apology. That was after I texted him last night, by the way, and told him that I didn't mind that he deleted the tweet, considering he still has to work in this town, and Hollywood isn't fond of people who are friendly to anybody across the aisle. He put up a full apology for ever having suggested that I was a nice person who had views worth listening to. So that was wonderful.
You said he got ratioed on Twitter. Explain what that means.
So what ratioed means is when you have a tweet that is liked more than it is actually, that is liked fewer times than it is commented upon, it's called being ratioed, which is a pretty good indicator that people are angry at you. So his original tweet got ratioed, and then his apology got ratioed. So he sort of got it both coming and going.
I mean, all right, let me give people a sense of what all this is. Let's put up what his apology said. So after he said, you know, Ben's actually a nice guy. We don't really agree on everything, but he's a decent person, and you might want to check him out. Then he comes back with this. So that tweet was a disaster on many levels. I want to be clear that I in no way endorse hatred, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, or any such form of intolerance. My goal has always been to spread unity, understanding, and kindness, but I am going to make mistakes along the way. So that was his mea culpa for ever having said that, you know, anybody might want to check you out. Then Tom Arnold, who just, you know, appears to want to weigh in on pretty much everything these days, said this. Put up the Tom Arnold tweet, because this is sort of indicative of the kind of heat that Ben got during this whole exchange. Just make sure none of these little F-ers jumps on my back. They're hair pullers. At Ben Shapiro, 5'2", looks and sounds prepubescent, but technically a man. So for purposes of brawl and all the kicks headed toward his teeth and face, he shall be deemed a man. Pray Tucker Carlson gets here. What is that? Where does this come from?
I have no idea. I mean, this is a guy who once had a tattoo of Roseanne Barr, so I can't speak to his mental health. But the fact that he is considered a member of good standing in Hollywood is pretty incredible. And again, what this really is about is that it wouldn't matter if it were me. I mean, if Mark Duplass had tweeted out about you, if he had tweeted out about anybody on Fox News, anybody who's perceived to be of the right, anybody who's perceived to be mildly conservative outside of people who have endorsed Democrats for 2018, he would have been ratioed just as hard by members of the left, and he probably would have deleted the tweet and then apologized for it. Amazing how in 24 hours I went from a nice guy with good intentions who tries to speak the truth to a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, which, you know, frankly, I'm getting a little bit used to, considering that everybody on the left assumes that everyone who is not on the left is a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe.
And you say that you often have people from Hollywood who listen to you. And my guess is that you said you hadn't heard from him in a while. He was probably listening to you, probably listening to the podcast, probably enjoying the show. And that may have been what prompted him to send that tweet that, you know, he now regrets and took down. But you say a lot of times you have people who are very famous who stop by, and you tell your staff, don't take pictures with them. You know, I want them to feel free to come and go, essentially, and not get heat for it.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I always tell them, the celebrities, when you come in, don't take pictures of yourself with me unless you want it publicly posted, because you never know what the blowback's going to be in Hollywood. I literally wrote a 400-page book about bias in Hollywood. So I'm very well aware about bias in Hollywood. I mean, I've had mainstream producers brag to me that they discriminate against people who are conservative in Hollywood. And the same holds true with anybody who's willing to reach across the other side of the aisle. I mean, even when I was on Bill Maher's show on HBO, Maher got flack for even having me on. That's sort of the way things work out here. And I don't blame Duplass for pulling down the tweet. I didn't ask him to make the nice tweet in the first place. I feel bad for the guy, honestly. I mean, he's sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place in that he made a decent statement, and then everybody on the left came down on him, and he still wants to work in the town.
All right. Ben, stand by, because we have a bunch of stuff that we want to ask you about. So double-barreled round tonight of Ben Shapiro coming up, including how the DNI director, Dan Coats, reacted to a whole lot today. The news that President Trump has now invited Vladimir Putin to the White House in the fall. Also ahead, a powerful moment for the Me Too movement at the ESPYs. Did you see this? It is our quote of the night. It is worth sticking around for, and it is coming up.
I encourage those suffering to hold tight to your faith and stand tall when speaking your truth, because I'm here to tell you.
We have some breaking news. The White House has announced on Twitter that Vladimir Putin is coming to the White House in the fall.
Say that again?
Vladimir Putin coming to the...
Did I hear you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be special.
That's going to be special, says the Director of National Intelligence, the person who oversees all of the intelligence arms in the United States. Back now with me, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com. I mean, that's kind of a weird way for someone in that position to get that news. Don't you think, Ben?
Yeah, it is, but this administration does not work along normal channels. I mean, this is an administration where the president basically decides to do something, and I think a lot of his staff is always attempting to catch up. Also, Coates obviously can't be supremely happy with the president after the president said in front of Vladimir Putin that he takes Putin at his word and he takes the intelligence community at their word, being equated with Vladimir Putin in matters of honesty regarding Russian election interference is probably not what Coates had in mind when he took the job.
Yeah, and the president today talked about what a great success the Helsinki meetings were. And, you know, you can't, it kind of appears as though this second meeting for the fall is kind of an attempt at a redo.
I think there's some truth to that. I mean, what we saw here was President Trump made some statements, then he walked it back, then he walked back the walk back. And part of walking back the walk back is that he wants a second shot at Putin or a second bite at the apple. I do wonder how differently it'll go. You know, if there is a second meeting, I'm a little bit skeptical the president is going to be a lot more militant with Putin than he was in the first meeting, particularly because it's a few months down the line and because the president tends to be he tries to be nice to people who are in the room with him, and that is true for Vladimir Putin. He tries to win people over personally, so there's no reason to think that he would radically shift his strategy with regard to Putin just a few months from now, I think.
I want to get to a couple of hot topics with you. NATO, subject of big discussion. We spoke about it earlier tonight. Should we defend Montenegro?
Of course we should defend Montenegro. The reason I say of course is simply because the NATO alliance has been the most durable alliance in modern world history. There have been no major European cross-border wars since the end of World War II, and that's largely due to the presence of NATO. And the reason that you defend countries like Montenegro is not because they are of inherent interest to the United States. It's because if you allow dictators like Vladimir Putin to walk all over other countries, then he becomes more and more aggressive, and then he takes more and more territory. You know, in 1938, 1939, it would have been very easy for a lot of isolationists to say, well, why should we defend the Sudetenland or Austria or Czechoslovakia or Poland or France? The question is, which countries are really worth defending? And the fact is that unless you are going to take the position that unless America is directly attacked, we ought not defend ourselves, then what this really means is the way that you avoid having to actually go to war in places like Montenegro is by making clear to Vladimir Putin that if he steps across the border, he's going to get walloped. Yeah. I mean, this idea that you're going to constantly be signaling weakness on Russia's borders, and then you get gradually drawn into a conflict. I mean, we've seen that already happen with regard to Syria, where Barack Obama was quite weak, and Russia got more and more involved to the point where the United States had to increasingly be drawn into a war we didn't want to have anything to do with in the first place.
All right, Trump versus Biden. He seems to think that would be a really easy matchup for him. What do you think?
I'm not quite so sanguine about Biden. I think Biden would probably be one of the stronger Democratic candidates because, number one, he's been through the mill a couple of times already. Number two, you assume he's going to be endorsed by President Obama. Number three, he has some blue-collar appeal, particularly in the Midwest. And number 4, I think that it would do good for President Trump to remember that Hillary Clinton handpicked him. That didn't go exactly how Hillary Clinton thought it was going to go. So trying to handpick your opponent is always a little bit of a dicey business.
You know, I mean, he ran before, obviously, and didn't do well, but he now has sort of acquired this avuncular adoration on the part of many people in the country. He was vice president, and, you know, President Obama loves him. They have this great relationship. So I think it would be kind of a different, fresh take, perhaps, on Joe Biden if he ran again this time. The Democrats' new slogan for the midterms is "For the People." Your thoughts?
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. It's an awful slogan. I mean, is the idea here supposed to be that their opponents are against the people? Because these are the same folks who want to raise your taxes and want to increase regulations and presumably want to return to an intersectional politics led by people like Alexandria Ortega-Cortez. So that seems Ocasio-Cortez.
Ocasio.
It seems like a foolish slogan, but isn't this their 4th attempted slogan of the cycle, something like that?
Ben Shapiro, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Good to see you tonight.